everybody. This is Angela Heath, and thank you for joining us on the Gig Worker Summit. We have been having such a wonderful time talking to all of these fabulous experts, and I'm sure you've been learning a lot. Well, we've got a great treat for you now. Annabel Kaye is the founder of the Coffee Klatch. And they've been in business for over 10 years. And what she does is help people understand the legal side and some practical tips in the gig economy. So welcome, Annabel. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
You know, I usually ask people to start off telling us a little bit about who they are and how they got started working around this whole gig economy issue.
I have an older company than Coffee Klatch, which is an HR and employment law consultancy. I've been running for 38 years. So my original discipline was around the dark side of HR. I'm ashamed to say, apart from my own team, I've never given anyone a pay rise or a promotion. I've always dealt with the things nobody wanted to deal with. And about 10 years ago, we realized that a lot of our clients who would once have had, say, 50 people who worked for them, suddenly had 10. But they weren't out of business, they weren't having a recession, they just simply didn't have the headcount anymore. And we got talking to them, we went, where did the people go? And they went, oh, it's all right, they're all self-employed now, we outsourced it all. And we were like, okay, so you think that if you just tell everybody they're self-employed, that's it then? There were no issues, there were legal issues, no relationship issues. And they were like, yep. And so we started to research what's now called the gig economy, but we didn't have a word for it then. And if I say to you now, it's famous what's been going on with Uber drivers across the world, with Amazon, with brands like Deliveroo, it's far from straightforward that just telling everyone, oh, you're self-employed, is the end of your problems. So we created the Coffee Klatch brand to talk about how we get micro entrepreneurs outsourcing going in a way that's flexible but doesn't really hurt, because sometimes that flexibility can cut too deep, can't it?
Okay, great. That's wonderful. Very interesting how you got started. You saw a need and you started to fulfill the need, and that's the way all businesses should be started. So let's talk about this whole relationship thing, because you speak a lot about how important these relationships are, you know, so when you get going on the gig economy, you can last, but what do they actually mean in the gig economy?
When you're running as a freelancer or a contractor or a self-employed person, you don't have a department. So a lot of the people you used to work with at work are external to you. So you have to get people to help you out. I'm not a genius of everything a business needs to do. In fact, you really don't want to see the website I would design. You don't want to see the newsletters I write, because to be honest, they look awful. So I work with people I pay who do that stuff for me, but they're not my employees. And people pay me to do the stuff I do really well so that they don't have to worry about that. But obviously, if we're all arguing and misunderstanding each other about who needs to do what and who's paying for what and who owns what, instead of building a really healthy network where everybody makes money and everybody gets paid, we start a really negative cycle of everybody hating everybody, everybody being disappointed. And I see this a lot in growing micropreneurs because we're kind of optimistic, aren't we? I mean, you know, when you go to motivational conferences and when you spend too much time on your own in your back bedroom trying to create a business, you need to go to a few, don't you? And people get on stage, you know, and they go, I did it my way, I made it happen, nobody can ever tell me what to do. And you think, wow. But in reality, thousands of micro enterprises go bust because the founder doesn't have the skill set and the relationships to make it happen. But nobody is ever asked to get up on stage and say, tell us why none of your businesses ever made any money. You're never going to hear from that woman or that guy, are you? So we have this cult of it's all about attitude or it's all about hard work. which it is. Without the right attitude and without work, you're not going to get anywhere. But when it comes to working smart, you need to create relationships that get the job done, that don't get you sued or disliked by the people you're working with. And that's tricky, isn't it?
It is. It is. So say a little bit more. You say relationships broadly. What kind of relationships do micro entrepreneurs, gig workers typically need to form, and why?
Well, let's take them in sequence. You're starting a business, and certainly when I started my first business some ago, and you know, we all like to go to the bathroom together, and quite a lot of us like to start businesses together. So we get hold of our best friend or our sister, or the guys do this too, don't we? And we go, right, let's found a business. And because we're really great friends, that's it then. We go off and we do stuff. I can't tell you how many great family relationships, how many great friendships have been ruined because the business got in the way. You may think that you're asking your sister or your friend from college to help you because she loves you. But she may be thinking, I'm a co-founder in this business, and if this business really works, I'm going to get paid a lot, I'm going to make my fortune. And you're thinking they're just helping me out. So you really have to have great clarity, doubly so when you work with people you already know and love, about what is the type of relationship you're entering into. Is this a co-founder, a business partner, someone you're going to be in it for the long haul? Are you just asking your sister to do some graphics, one-off? Who owns the copyright to those graphics? Supposing your new enterprise is the next Microsoft, and your sister comes in and says, I never said you could use all those logos more than that week. That's the basis of a really negative family argument, isn't it?
So there are legal instruments, of course, that we put in place so we can kind of define your role, my role, how you're compensated, what your limits are. So that's a big part of it, correct?
Absolutely. And we kind of don't want to do that. Now, I fell foul of that this summer. I mean, I can't tell you how long I've been doing this, and still I make mistakes, you know, because you think I know them, I like them, I trust them, they understand me. And before you know it, the whole thing's gone really wrong because you didn't have the conversation. So let's start with some of the labels. But the first and really important thing to understand in the gig economy is what you label a thing doesn't change what it is. So if you say to someone you're a volunteer or you're self-employed or you're an intern and they don't meet the legal test for that, it doesn't matter what you called it. Their legal rights will be defined by reality, not by the label.
Okay.
So you can't go to the IRS and go, I am passionate about my business, I totally believe I don't owe any money on this. And they're going to go, we don't care what you believe. This is what it says. You did these things, you owe this money. I have tried it with the British equivalent, by the way, and no amount of fundamental belief that I don't owe my taxes has ever got me off.
Right.
That
would be great if it worked, right?
Sort of. We'd have no roads, would we, or anything like that. But yeah, but belief was the only thing. So you have to get your structures right. So let's start with the commonest structure that micropreneurs go for, which is a kind of informal partnership. So you start off and you don't have a conversation and you don't write anything down. So there are some questions that are going to go wrong very, very quickly if you don't answer these things. So here's some top tips. And by the way, I've got a download for you with loads more top tips in. So what are you trying to achieve? What is the business? Is this a side hustle where both of you are very happy if you make a certain amount of money a month? Are you trying to be the next Microsoft? What are you doing? What's the scale of your ambition? Get your business partner that you want to be a business partner to answer these questions separately to you. Because it's very easy when you're all together to go, this is my dream, I want to be a millionaire, a billionaire. But actually your business partner's thinking, well, I just wanted to make enough money for a holiday. You know, it's a big gap sometimes between us. So ask these questions separately of yourself and write them down, because you're going to need to compare. Have a look at if the business is not making money from day one, and that's perfectly normal, isn't it? Is one of you going to have a job and the other one do all the work until the business is ready to take two of you? How are you going to account for that? Is it going to be fair if both of you just split the profits 50-50? How are you going to measure who's doing what and who should get what money? I mean, common models are perhaps if one of you's in the business, one of you takes a certain amount of money and then both of you share the profit. But what about if the other one's working and got a job? What if they're putting money in? Be clear about what you think a fair contribution is. In 1980, I started a business with a business partner. Lovely girl, I loved her. And we got going. We had no idea, by the way, had no idea about sales and marketing or accounting or anything. Typical startups, we just did it. And after about 6 months, I realized that she wanted to get paid before we paid the people we owed money to. And I thought it was quite important that we paid our debts and then we got paid. We should have had that conversation before we got into business together, because the only people who made money out of that relationship was the lawyers.
Wow. You know, and that is a really, really good point. How I just consulted with a micropreneur, like last week, who was facing that exact issue. She and a partner, they never had anything in writing, which I advised her against from the very beginning. And the partner was still working. And the woman I'm advising, she was doing all the work on the business. And they were at one point splitting 50-50. And she just had to give her something in writing that said, we're not doing this anymore. So that's like, these seem so simple, but these are like very practical things. And there are, consequences to not defining and putting things in writing, as you said.
And the consequence could be losing a friend, or worse still if it's a family member. And one of my early business partners was one of my brothers, by the way. It can start a family feud because you keep seeing them every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, then your business is thriving and maybe they've gone off to do something that didn't work so well and they're looking at you. They've not forgotten. It's much, but you don't want to, do you? Think, because I love them, I don't want to embarrass them by saying, how much do I need to pay you, or what are you expecting for this? Because family help each other. But in reality, the more you love them, the more important it is you sort this out.
Good point. That's a great point. Now, what other tips can you share with us? I know we have limited time and you have tons of tips. Give us some of your, your best 3 or 4 tips would you give to either like an entrepreneur who's just starting in the gig economy, or even someone who may have already had some success, but now they're really starting to think like business people and they want to build a structure. What's some of your best advice for us?
Get to grips with how the people side of things works where you are, and indeed where you're not when you're running a global business, because you can be working from your back bedroom in America or in England, you could be hiring people in Thailand, you could be working in Australia. It's not what it was, where it was all like small town where we are. You have to really understand what you're doing. For example, both in America and in the whole of Europe, just calling someone a volunteer doesn't mean they're not entitled to minimum wage. There are volunteers who aren't, but they work for legitimate charities or specific types of institutions, and you can't go around your neighborhood getting all your friends to work for you forever for nothing and say, they're just volunteers, what's the problem? There's going to be big problems about that. One is the minimum wage, people will eventually find you, and the other one is your friends will hate you. Right? Everybody's going to help a friend out for an afternoon, for an evening, for a short-term crisis. But if you're getting to the point where you think, I expect my friends to help me, you should start finding a way to pay them.
That's good. Yeah, because eventually everybody wants to be paid, right?
Yeah. But you should get in there first, because going to your friend going, you know what, we finally started to make some money. It's not a lot, but I'd like to pay you this. It's so much better than them sitting there going, when's she going to offer me something? This is ridiculous. How long is this going to take? You need to get in first with that kind of thinking, even if you can only make small commitments. Don't make them ask you.
Okay.
Yeah, get in there first. You're the boss, you're the leader. That means you think first. You step first, don't you? You don't wait for them to tell you what they're miserable about. I'd be miserable. So that'll be my tip for volunteering. Watch the label intern, right? Interns under federal law in most states, and certainly in Europe, and particularly in UK law, are also entitled to be paid unless they fit very, very narrow criteria. So you can't just say, all the people who work in my organisation are interns and they work for nothing either. Well, you can, but again, it will catch up with you and they won't like it. So if you're offering a real internship with real training, which very few startups could do, that's one thing. But just calling everybody who helps you intern is not the way to go. Because if you're going to build a brand that people want to collaborate with and cooperate with, having fake labels is not a way to build trust.
So I kind of get what you're saying about, you know, the labels, no really defense. So you can make up any kind of label. It doesn't necessarily stick, right? I hadn't thought about the intern label.
No, it's, and I've checked this very carefully, but, you know, all across America, people go, well, where interns are unpaid, and it's an issue, isn't it? It's an issue for the whole world, really. But a lot of those interns are not, and one call to the local minimum wage board is going to cause a problem. Now, we know that that's very much abused, but if you're creating a business in your community, with your neighbours, with the people you know, and you're abusing that, it's very different, because you've got to see these people all the time, haven't you?
Right.
I personally think you shouldn't do anything at the other end of the world that you'd be embarrassed to do in your own town. But, you know, you can't get away from that when you're getting going, and maybe you've got kids and somebody's babysitting your kids while you work and you're babysitting them. You're together, aren't you? This is no place for kind of brutal exploitation. And then we move on to, are they actually freelancers? Are they contract workers?
That's a big one. That's a big one.
Well, that's quite interesting, because here we have a big divide. In Europe at the moment, we have 3 categories of workers. We have people who have a job, and we all know what a job is. And we have people who run a business, and most of us know what that is. But we have a third category of people in the middle who are known as workers. And they're people who are contracted to do the job themselves. They can't send someone instead of them. A bit like the old crafts workers, really. And those people have a set of legal rights that are more than someone in business, but less than an employee. And I noticed that California and various other states in the USA are looking at this, because this is a reflection of the gig economy, when you can no longer go, either you're running a business or you've got a job. Most of us are running a business of some kind or another. It might be a side hustle. It might be a hobby that suddenly got profitable. It might be something we meant to have. And it's not that clear cut anymore, is it? The corporate structure doesn't fit the gig economy at all. But the thing I would say to you is the law doesn't have a business category for friends. Right, so if you're trying to get out of the whole thing by going, but they like me, you're going to have a hard time persuading any attorney that that's a defense if things go wrong.
You know, I think here, you know, there's so much conversation going on right now about how do we label these, whether they're freelancers or whatever, and it's very, very gray, because what we sort of thought of as freelancers, you know, 10, 15 years ago may be somewhat different today, because there's this, like, a lot of freelancers are starting to join together, not to create that corporate structure, but they're coming together on teaming agreements where they go after a large contract, they stay together, they finish their contract, and then they end.
Yeah, so they're like a flash football team, aren't they? I was thinking like a flash football team. You know, they get on the field, they play their best game, they play the match, but when the match is over, they're not on the same team anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
But if you're on that team and you play badly, you do badly for your own side, you deliberately foul them so that they lose, you're not going to be called back. So even though it's not just about ethics for what kind of person and business person do I want to be, no one's going to ask you onto that squad next time if you behaved badly.
Right.
And one of the problems you get with squads like that, particularly people who will know each other, is we don't bother to set boundaries. So I could be thinking we're all playing football, but actually I'm playing English football, which you call soccer, and you're playing American football. Now we're in a muddle, aren't we? We haven't actually said what football means, and we haven't said what the rules are. So when you run up and down the field with the ball, I'm going, that's not allowed. And you're going, well, you know, why are you just kicking it like that? Why don't you pick it up and run? To create a team, you have to create shared expectations about what the rules are.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if you don't do that, you'll get on one team, two teams, but you won't get on the tiny team that often wins. And it's really hard because most of us are amateurs at being in the gig economy. Mm-hmm. There aren't many people you could go to and go, okay, show me a successful model. How does that work? Because the people who are very successful in it either get out of it or create something that's no longer gig, don't they?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, in that sense, it's hard to find people succeeding in it for very long because they vanish. But you need to set really clear boundaries in that team about who's doing what, who's responsible for what, and also how to measure it. One of the things I do a lot in the groups of people I support in Coffee Clutch, we do terms of business for our customers and we do associate agreements for the people they pay. And there's a section in each agreement that says, what are the quality standards? How are we going to measure whether this job is done right? 9 times out of 10, someone will come and say, I don't know, what should I fill in the box? And I'm like, okay, you're just about to pay someone to do stuff for you, and you haven't figured out how you're going to know if the job's done properly. Before you take them on, I think you need to sit down and work it out. How are you going to measure the job's done right and I'm happy to pay?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And actually, it's an incredibly difficult thing because when you work in a big company, they just set all that up for you, don't they? All their measures, all their metrics, everything. You may love them or hate them, but you don't normally have to create them, do you?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I was talking to a virtual assistant in the gig economy a couple of months ago, and she had a new client, and she was doing social media creatives for the new client and then getting them out there. And the client said, you're not doing the job properly. It's not what I want. So I said, well, did you agree about what she wanted? And she went, nothing, because she didn't seem to know. So she had a client refusing to pay her on the grounds that the job wasn't done well enough, who could not tell her what well enough looked like.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It took me about 2 hours to sort them out, you know, because that's part of my day-to-day, really. But I did say to the end client, I'm shocked that you would put a budget in, spend that much money without ever thinking, what does a good job look like?
Wow.
But it's common. If we ran a poll here, you know, you would find an amazing number of people would go, yeah, I work like that all the time. We just know. But actually what we're doing is we are assuming that the other person knows the same stuff as us. And we often mistake getting on well with someone for them doing a good job.
Wow. That's like really sort of touching home with me, because I'm thinking about the last 5 subcontractors that I'm hiring, and the fact that I have not really thought that through. You know, what means that what evidence is there that the job is satisfactory and well done? I mean, there's language in the agreement about a satisfactory job and me approving it, but there's really no definition around it.
And this is a really difficult piece of work, you know, because it's not easy. But the thing is, the measure should be there for the contractor so that they can self-measure and go, she's going to be happy with this because she told me it had to do this, this, and this, and it does. Where things go wrong is where you've got a measure in your head that you can't articulate. The person you're paying's got another measure, and it's only when you get the work, and I've done it, and you've done it too, I'm sure you looked at it and you thought, you know what, I'm not happy with this. It wasn't really what I was expecting. And then you think, well, what did I say about what I wanted to expect? And the answer was, not a lot. And of course, then you get the do-over problem, because either the contractor does it over again at their expense, and you can only do so many of those before they don't want to be your contractor anymore. or you pay them to do it again, in which case you're losing money.
Right. Yeah.
Or you accept stuff that's not what you want and go away and go, not very happy about that. Which is very bad for the soul, I think, because you don't want to put stuff out for your brand that you're not happy with, do you?
Right.
I wouldn't like to. So it's very difficult. So you've got to set expectations, really, that are measurable. Not this stuff you get in corporate life of here's the metrics and the KPIs and blah, blah, blah. Seriously, how will I know if I like a graphic?
Right.
I find that hard because I'm not a visual person, by the way. So when people go, well, what are the Pantones? What are the brand values? How do you want people to feel when you see a graphic? It's like, I don't know. I'd quite like them to feel like giving me some money. How I don't mind if they're happy or not. Could they just give me some money? And they go, no, you're not taking this seriously. But I've actually had to hire people to explain to me what it is I think, because apparently I do think about this stuff, but I don't speak graphics.
I don't speak graphics either.
You know what I mean? And it's the same with IT, isn't it? You get someone, the techie person, to do stuff about your computer sooner or later, unless you're a techie person. And then they just do stuff. And you think, well, there was a lot of stuff being done. Was that good stuff? Was that bad stuff?
Right.
At what point do I want to know about this stuff anyway? And so I've learned, I've got a great IT person. I work in London. He's in South Africa, by the way. We live the life we teach, And it took me about 5 years of perseverance with him to go, look, I want it secure, but I want it locked down, but I don't want it so secure that I can't get in. Because we went through a long period when our tech was so secure I couldn't get into anything.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that sounds not like a good thing.
No, but there are issues about data privacy and security in the world. You can't just wander about going, I'm an idiot, I won't have a password, can you? But right. I found that really difficult. So we had to find ways that meant I could get in without the whole world getting in. That was the mission.
Right.
By the way, I would make a really great super criminal because none of these fingerprint recognizing things recognize my fingerprints.
Uh-oh.
I think maybe I'm in the wrong profession there.
So, Annabel, you've hit so many really great points about just being very clear, having it in writing, and making sure that whatever relationship, however you define it, that it's official and there's a meeting of the minds. As we wrap up, is there one last great tip you want to give these folks in the gig economy that you feel they just have to know this?
Well, yeah, it's a bit cheeky, really. So I'm going to give them this one tip, which is we have a really good free download for people that is free wherever you are in the world. Don't talk to me about GDPR and data protection, which sets out some much more detailed tips than this, because you're going to need to set boundaries with your friends and family so you know when you're working and when you're playing, because there's going to be nothing sadder this holiday than sitting with your family going, oh, by the way, you didn't do that right at work, and by the way, I'm not happy about the way you did that. If you're going to create a business and a life, you have actually got to start by setting rules, which sounds really weird, but they're rules for you, not just rules for them. And if you want to know what they are, you are more than welcome to pick up a free download. And by the way, we're not a hard sell organisation. If you actually like what we do, come and say hello on our Facebook page. Come and say hello on Twitter. Otherwise, go in peace and get on with your business. Make a great success of it and try to keep your friends friendly and your family close.
Thank you so much. That is going to conclude this session, but I am going to encourage you guys to stay tuned. We have more great presentations coming up. Thank you for joining the Gig Worker Summit.